I'm Tanisha, and this is my testimony of how God delivered me from depression. So, this was back in the day, way back in the day. I was 17 years old when I went to the first psychiatric center because I was plagued with a deep, dark, suicidal depression. Like, I thought that I would never be set free from that. I thought that I was doomed for the rest of my life. Like, I thought that the only way out of it was just to die. So when I first tried to commit suicide, the first few times, because I've done it, I attempted way more times than I can count or than I can remember. So maybe like the first 2 or 3 times, it was just a cry for help. I just needed somebody to know what I was going through so they could help me. But when I got to the psychiatric center, I realized real quick that none of them could help me. And it just became an ongoing cycle of me going back and forth to these psychiatric centers. And every time I would go back, I would see a different doctor and they'll give me a different medication. And it was so useless. Well, I won't say it was useless because it got me fed up. It got me so fed up. And I remember when I made the decision that I wasn't going to deal with it no more. I just made the decision. I was I was 18 years old and I was pregnant. I was 6 months pregnant with my last child, excuse me. Because I had 3 kids by the time I was 18. Yes, a walking statistic, okay? But I was pregnant, 6 months pregnant, and I was in the psychiatric center and I just remember thinking like, I am not coming back here. I'm not coming back. And I did not allow myself to think past that because I was so um, set on the fact that I was not coming back. There was no thinking past it. I just knew that I was not coming back. And a few months later, this is after I had my baby. Mind you, I was 6 months pregnant that day that I made that decision. I was 6 months pregnant. And a few months later, I had my baby. And I don't remember how old he was when the Lord delivered me. But I know he was still an infant. So he could have been 2 weeks or he could have been 2 months. But he wasn't that old. And I remember one day I was in the living room sitting on a couch with other people. And it was daytime. And I was watching this scary movie. And the crazy part is I was creeped out by this movie, which was weird because I never came across a scary movie that could actually scare me. Like it was like a thrill to find a scary movie that could actually scare me. I love scary movies. I would watch them in the dark by myself. But this day, I was in the living room on a couch in the daytime with some other people, and I was creeped out when I was watching that movie. And then later that night, I'm in bed trying to go to sleep, and I was even more creeped out. I could not get away from this feeling of feeling creeped out. Like I was beyond scared. It just was creepy and eerie. And I remember thinking that I seen something in a corner of my room. It was like a dark figure. And it was like, to me, it kind of looked like you know how they used to have like aliens looking in the movie with like that light bulb here or something. I don't know. I don't know. But it reminded me of like an alien I seen in a movie or something. And I know I seen it. And I was so scared that it caused me to pray. And I don't remember what my relationship with God was back then. But baby, I prayed that day. I did not know him like that. And I don't know how often I prayed or I don't remember. But baby, I prayed that day. And I'm going to tell you, as soon as I started praying, as soon as I started praying, I felt this tingling feeling go from my head, literally from my head, all the way down to my toes. Literally. And it was the best feeling I ever felt before. And I knew it was God. I knew for a fact that it was God and something changed inside of me. And I knew that I was changed. I knew it. I knew it for a fact. I felt it. I knew I was different. And I don't remember the whole process after that. It was so long ago, but I know that the depression was gone. Baby, that depression fell off of me like I was wearing clothes 100 times too big. And I had a bright new outlook on life. I went from being like a miserable, shy person who would not talk, who didn't really speak, who didn't really laugh and joke, to this outgoing person who smiled all the time. I became a go-getter. Man, I went after my high school diploma. And I went after that thing. It took me 3 years to get it in 3 different schools, but I got it. I went after my driver's license. To you, you may be thinking, well, okay, I got that stuff in high school or right out of high school. But for me, I was borderline illiterate with 3 kids at the age of 18 years old. And the only thing I wanted to do was get my high school diploma so I could go to college. That was like my biggest dream at that time. And finally, I had the confidence to go after it. Fast forward to, I would say, 2021, once God delivered me from alcoholism, and I started posting these Christian videos on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. And I built up a nice following on TikTok of other Christian content creators. And one thing I noticed was a lot of them were dealing with depression and anxiety. And I don't mean just dealing with it sometimes. Like, they were plagued with it. They felt trapped in it. They felt the same way that I felt. Now, they were much more functioning than I was, because they would show up one day, preaching and praising in a video. And then the next day they would show up talking about how they feel trapped in depression. And I'm like, wow. And I was so amazed. I did not realize how many people, especially Christians, are dealing with depression and anxiety, and they can't find their way out. So I asked God, why me? I never knew why. I just know that God gave me this priceless, precious gift, and I didn't really question it. And he reminded me of that decision I made that day, my last day. He reminded me of that decision I made. He was like, you made the decision, not me. You made the decision that you were not dealing with that anymore. You made that decision. Over the years, I still got choked up by all the cares and the worries of this world. And I still wasn't happy with my life. Yeah, after he delivered me, I was so outgoing. I was so optimistic. I was such a go-getter. I was so happy for about 2 years. And that stuff started to fade away. Now, I never felt back into that depression again, but I still was not a happy person. I can show up and be happy. I would have happy moments, and I wasn't like completely miserable, but I hated my life. And I had this mindset that we were never meant to be happy here on this side of eternity. Happiness and peace and joy that comes from Christ is meant for us in heaven, not here. And I remember talking to God about it and telling him how I felt. And for a long time, that is truly how I felt, because I'm like, man, at this point, I was in my 30s and I still couldn't find it. I still couldn't find the happiness. I still couldn't reach the joy, even though it literally lives right inside of me through God's Holy Spirit. I could not obtain it. So finally, in 2021, this is after I turned my life over to the Lord, and I started waking up every day with a heart to please God. God started transforming me from the inside out, but I was so miserable. And one day I asked God, I said, God, why, if I wake up every single day with a heart to please you, why am I still miserable? And God was like, because I don't have your whole heart. Because you're not focused enough on me. You are too focused on what you can see. You are too focused on what you don't have. And it's holding you hostage to your situation. It's keeping you stagnant. See, God has given us all the tools in his word. He has given us principles in his word to set us free. And we don't even see it. We don't even know it. A lot of us, we read the Bible, but we just read it for what it says. We don't dig deep into it. Or we go to church and we just listen to what the preacher tells us. But we don't dig deep enough for ourselves. And then most of all, we don't even talk to God about it. And all these years, I wondered why I could not achieve happiness and joy and peace, even though it literally lived right inside of me. Galatians 5:22. I didn't find out why until I just simply asked God. And when I asked him the question, he gave me the answer. He said, you need to change your point of view. Stop focusing on what you can physically see. Stop focusing on your lack and focus on me. He said, put some action behind your faith. Dig deep into me. Dig deep into my word. See, we all have God's Holy Spirit literally living right inside of us. All we have to do is open our mouths and address him. That is it. And that is what I do every single day. I have conversations with God. Start having conversations with God. It will literally set you free. Start digging deeper into his word. It will literally set you free.